You don't call, you don't write. How is that not to imply that you think what I'm doing must be right? Think that I'm doing all right, and you don't mind giving up your rights. Don't mind seeing your leaders aligned with the violent right. Don't mind carrying water to pour on the altar where we plan to sacrifice all of your pensions in one of our nameless imperial rights that renders the rioters silent and pries every rhyme by its root in their heads, that quiets the storm by denying them platforms to buy up some time for the task force crafting a law to detain them and mace them if they try to ask for their water and bread. Mind you, the bread looks like moss off a boulder from all of the mold, and the water is rusted and red. As bitter as all of the blood you hear pounding when you try to block out the sounds as you're lying in bed. Mind you, the bed is a spot on the floor, and there's really no more to be said. You don't call, you don't write. If you knew better, there'd be mountains of letters outside, stacked to the sky, blocking the sun out, blocking my drive. You would slow the flow of my campaign funds down, my reputation in the ground by sundown. It's a good thing I got MSNBC on my PR rundown. To put you at ease, maybe give you a nice little neolib rubdown. And to blare my redemption from Breitbart to Cumtown. Flood all your free speech channels with a bunch of raw shit and shut the pumps down. And then usher out a couple dozen sock accounts to pop up in your mentions with their toxins stocked and talons out, here to help defend a man's dementia with the passion of a talent scout, selling you their bullshit while they're drooling half a gallon down the hat. They'll pull a rabbit out. Now verbally they'll strap you down, slap you with a finely crafted soundbite from the squad that you could try to feed your family with, or play back for the officers arriving to evict you in the hopes that they won't snatch you out. But big surprise, their clubs are out and masks are down, impolitely asking you to pack a little faster now, just to please the bastard with the fascist hats and badge that makes him think he's someone actually of matter, not an actor playing overseer at the sick behest of benefactors who will starve as many families as it takes to make their profits fatter. And when they tell those loyal cops their kids are on the chopping block to sate their daily greed or need to satisfy their hungry stocks, statistically, 2/5 of these are all too pleased, because it just means that they could beat their spouses without all those little weak attempts to make them stop. I was watching TV, screaming, "Make it stop." Screaming at the cable feed of Double Talk. Screaming at the Daily Razor shaving down our labor laws. Screaming at the left like they can wave a wand and change it all. Screaming at the leaders we gave time and trust and money to who played us all. We the people, tattered rags and paper dolls. Screaming at our debt and at the overfed pigs who created all. And trying to teach the ways of the world to my son like I don't hate it all. Stone soup, cops came and ate it all. Waters for the homeless? Cops are gonna break them all. Education budget? Cops are gonna take it all. Send your kids to prison. Think about the time you'll save us all. Years later, you'll be lucky if you're paid at all. Years later, you'll be wired to a grid that turns your brain's electric current to a resource they can strip, and we will all be mining Bitcoin 80 hours at a clip. Too tired for the drive home. It ain't worth the trip, 'cause it just hurts to be reminded that you never see your kid. And every time they fire up the hub and plug you in, their memory recedes a little further till it blurs into the dim, till you can't recall your kin. Open up your eyes and you see Tesla on your skin. Earn a dime a day and owe them 20 for the mandatory membership to Tesla Gym, where we're all one big happy family who neutralized your family at the gates when they tried to sneak a message in, and taunts you with escape in our advertising messaging. Taunts you with the sounds of a child at play, a warm summer day, those things we can all sense slipping away 'cause their frequency is lessening. You are working for a living in which you are only visiting. Working under safety laws that profit ends up pivoting and shifting into figures in which losing you is just the cost of maximizing profit in the world that we do business in. That world in which we fight to see the bright side but always get the business end. And I've been here in wait since late '08 to witness this descent. So suck my soul away in little bits, a dime a day, but at a monthly cap of 50 cents. 'Cause Tesla-funded studies show that overpaid employees don't know what to do with all the extra money 'cause they're lazy or they're ignorant. But all that extra capital keeps innovation radical, so you can say that you were part of history in the making in the unacknowledged, patronizing, strictly honorary sense. Now, we understand you may resent that Mr. Musk was heaven sent to take you on his back for his divine ascent, and then just before he reached the palace gates above the firmament, he dropped you on the outer steps a month before retirement. Again, may we refer you to suggested ways of demonstrating gratitude for Mr. Musk that he was kind enough to let you feed his great Leviathan. Tesla-funded studies show that you amount to nothing in the hours you're not wired in. The hours you spend quietly denying that you let them in your head or let them walk potential buyers in. Mind you, all of this a mere month before retirement. And mind you, your retirement is waiting in the dirt that feeds the hyacinth. Or maybe, if you're lucky, you could spend another year assisting researchers in biosynth. And mind you, that amounts to nothing more than torture, but they wipe your memory after every session, washing out all prior sense. Think of it as Mr. Musk absolving you all prior sins. Don't think of it as skinning you and fitting you with trial limbs. Think of it as Mr. Musk presenting you the opportunity to help America's elite achieve tighter skin, fuller lips, healthy eyes, smoother lids. Don't think of it as rape. Try to think of it as Mr. Musk assigning you a mate because America needs cattle. I mean, kids. Don't ask what Mr. Musk can do for you. Ask yourself if there is something more you have to give. Ask yourself what more you have to give. Ask yourself what more you have to give. Ask yourself what more you have to give.
They won't let you go, set you free, send you home. Wait, please say you know what you need is what you owed, and they won't let you go, set you free, send you home.
I was close enough to smell the fire. Jesus took the wheel and then he kicked me off the ride. I was busy shouting at myself from in the crowd, about to throw down and drag myself outside. I had to give myself the business. When I show myself forgiveness, it goes right between the eyes. Was looking past my shoulder, never focused on the prize. I stalked myself through burning sand the better part of 40 nights. I found myself staring in the mirror, yelling, "Go into the light." Cause I was in the rear view, staring at the highway, horrified. I was in the road ahead, arms wide, ready to be mummified. Gonna be the fella yelling how he's sick of always betting on his life. I'll also be the guy that brought the dice. Half a dozen chambers and I keep an empty 5. Only needed one to break the ice. Only needed one to clear my mind. Only needed one to stop time.
Wait, please say you know what you need is what you owed, and they won't let you go, set you free, send you home.
I'll be the guy that brought the dice.
Who are these people?
Who are are these people? Hi, everyone. Oh my God, it's Tuesday night again. Oh wait, I have to do something. My bad. I forgot to turn on Substack. Let's see if we do this. Did I do it right? Streaming, sending data. Welcome, Substack. Did we do this, or did I forget to put the key in? I think we're good. Hi, Substack. What's up, everyone? Okay, this is Indie News Now Live. I am, of course, Indie. For those who are listening and not watching and don't see that thing on my face. So it's been a week. So we are Armageddon plus 2 hours apparently. So some people are saying taco. I say it was never really in the plans in the first place. I hope. I never really was terribly panicking, although I thought it was kind of interesting that I had a show planned for 2 hours after the apocalypse. I actually had a plan to potentially call this show Apocalypse Party, but thought against it. But we're going to do this. I've got a bunch of stories here, and then I'm going to do an update about Cowboy Kitty's sister-in-law. I broke down the notes that he had scribbled down while he was on the phone with her while she was in ICE lockup. So I want to go through that. And, you know, I'm going to mention very early on, of course, most of you in the chat here are familiar and know that last Thursday and that for the last 18 months, I've been every week, every show, showing a GoFundMe for our friend Shanda Masta. And unfortunately, she lost her battle with cancer on Thursday. And it was a really tough day. It's been a tough several days. We're here to continue to do our thing because this is what we do. And I'm sure that's what she would want us to be doing. And we ran the live stream the last interview that I did with her back in October. I was so glad to be able to do that. Grateful for her perspective at the time, and everybody came out and hung out and chat that night, and it was wonderful to see our whole community come together, and you could really see the family aspect of what they built. And a lot of the people that came into chat were people that watched Beauty and the Boomer every Saturday night, and watched Trailer Park Pundit, and watched Brave New Future when she was on with Amber, and watched To Hell and Back when she did that show with Pasta, and even when they did another show very briefly, and I can't even remember, it was like Court Cunts or something like that. They had to literally call it CC because they got in trouble for the name of the show. I'll never forget. So we're gonna bring some tweets and some love for Shanda. Thank you, Nay. I really appreciate that. But yeah, we're gonna bring a bunch of tweets that everybody brought and pay tribute to her later on tonight. But yeah, we've got a whole host of stories to get to tonight. We're gonna talk about a little bit about Iran, but not quite in the context that everybody else is really talking about it tonight, especially because I'm gonna talk a little bit about how we're getting our butts kicked. And just some of the things that I see that countries and, you know, people, whatever, entities that are winning don't do these kinds of things, number one. Number two, Dissent in Bloom is also in chat. It's good to see her tonight. She wrote a wonderful article, also a horrifying article, about the children of Dilley Detention Center in Texas and the families there. And I'm going to bring that one because I don't think enough people saw that. That kind of got lost in the shuffle to a point, and I haven't heard really too many people talking about the children there. And it's horrifying what we're doing to them. We're going to have a long Fuck Israel segment tonight. I've got a lot for that. And then we got a lightning round where we're going to talk about No Kings and what we think potentially a better way of protesting might be, a more effective method. The ICE warehouses not getting paused. And then inside this JDL, which is what I would consider a terrorist organization, you can make that distinction for yourself. But, and then, of course, we're going to start tonight with a story about something that happened that was completely unprecedented that I really didn't hear anybody talk about at all. And we've heard a little bit about, well, before I get to any of that, and so the story about that is about birthright citizenship. Trump attended a Supreme Court hearing. First time a sitting president's ever done that. So before we get to that, please support independent media because we need it more than ever. And we are completely user-funded and independent. The ways to do that are up on that board. Thank you, Mark Reinfeld, who picked up a monthly membership over at IndieNewsNow.com this week. Really appreciate that. Other ways to do that are at Cash App, $ Indie News Network, over at ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, and paypal.me/Indie News Network. Then we've got patreon.com, of course, for monthly subscription /Indie News Network. IndieNewsNow.com. Indie News Now Live is the name of the show. A lot of the articles you can actually find a link to directly from IndieNewsNow.com. It's a website that I set up, God, almost 2 years ago at this point, to aggregate news from all independent sources, completely ad-free. That also streams, and you can leave a tip for the network there. And then we've got INN Newsletter and IndieMediaToday.com. That's my Substack. We're live over there right now. Hi to everybody watching over at IndieMediaToday.com. We are there. You get clips there all week. I actually wrote an article yesterday, an original thing of all the stuff that I've been seeing. You can check that out over, again, IndieMediaToday.com. The other thing you can do is, if you're over on Rumble, if you click that little red subscribe button at the bottom of the chat window, you can actually pick up a monthly membership to the channel, and then every time you chat, it highlights your chat. It's $4.99 per month. It automatically recurs on your credit card, and we get 97% of that revenue. So that's another way to help the network by supporting us on Rumble. And there's also a little present down there. In red, that's a gift subscription. Again, 97% of subscriptions. Do not click the $ to the left of it, though. That is a Rumble rant that Rumble takes 50% off the top, and then PayPal takes a cut. So if you give $1, we get about 45 cents of that dollar. So don't do that. Do that at one of the other places. That's one of the reasons why I show all these different things, because it really does make a difference where you support as to how much we actually do receive. All right, I want to talk about this Supreme Court story because I as I was looking for stories this week, I really did not see anywhere or anyone talking about this. I'm like, this is kind of a big deal. So I'm relying on Truth Out, Indie Media Award honoree. Now, I at times have had issues with Truth Out. Oh, I don't think you heard that. Let me try that again. I've had issues with Truth Out. They simp for Democrats a little too much, in my opinion. I think that they lean a little too hard on hoping that progressives and Democrats will do the right thing without expecting that they won't, and holding them accountable to that level. But Sharon Zhang also is who I consider to be the best writer over there. She also is an Indie Media Award honoree separately for her journalism. She wrote this up on April 1st, and I literally thought this was an April Fool's article. I had to look like 4 other places to make sure that this was a real thing. But yes, Trump attends Supreme Court arguments in person after slamming justices who are disloyal. Remember, he's appointed 3 of the 9 himself personally. The case the court was arguing was his executive order on birthright citizenship. So it was deeply personal to him on top of it. And this is a picture of him in his motorcade as they're riding to the Supreme Court. This is the Getty Images thing. Shout out to Getty Images, but it's expensive as hell for a license. So, in an unprecedented move, President Donald Trump attended oral arguments in the Supreme Court on Tuesday as justices weighed his executive order on birthright citizenship, sparking concern that he was trying to intimidate justices after months of criticism over their rulings. I couldn't imagine that. Trump's motorcade arrived at the court around 10 a.m. Eastern. The president walked in the building, where he sat in the first row of the public seating alongside Commerce Secretary Howard Nutlick, a.k.a. Howard Lutnick. Okay. Trump then left about an hour and a half into the arguments. He sat there for 90 minutes. All right. But the arguments lasted more than 2 hours. He got bored after 90 minutes. It was like, I'm sure he was looking around going, how long is this going to last? And he just got up and left. The extraordinary move is a first for any sitting president, and he's drawn criticism from experts saying that it could be viewed as a way to intimidate justices into favoring his administration's arguments, trying to end the way birthright citizenship has been done for centuries in the United States. This is settled law. The justices did not react to his presence, reports say, of course. Most of the justices appeared to be skeptical of the administration's arguments presented by Solicitor General D. John Sauer, suggesting that the court may rule against the Trump administration to protect birthright citizenship, as it should. Trump's appearance at the court came after he openly criticized justices who rule against him on Tuesday. He complained that liberal justices rule against him, even if he brings the greatest case ever. But conservative justices do the same because they want to show how honorable they are. Some people would call it stupidity. Some people would call it disloyal. The other side almost never does it. Meaning breaking ranks. He's talking about them not voting all in lockstep as a bloc. Trump has a history of attacking Supreme Court justices personally for perceived slights against him, further eroding the separation of powers established between the judiciary and the executive. He wipes his ass with the Constitution. In February, he lashed out at Supreme Court Justices Amy Coney Barrett and Neil Gorsuch, both of whom he appointed himself, for their decisions to strike down his tariff policies. He said that he was ashamed of certain members of the court in remarks to the press. Said that they were still invited to his State of the Union, but barely. So petty. What a little whiny bitch. Later, when asked about Barrett and Gorsuch's opinions, he said, I don't want to say whether I regret nominating them. I think their decision was terrible. I think it's an embarrassment to their families. Whose families? Trump had considered visiting the Supreme Court when they heard arguments over his tariff policy, but decided against it so as not to distract from the importance of this decision, which he then summarily lost. Now he's probably regretting not going at that point. He had received criticism from both Democrats and a Republican over the idea. Oh, God. Because heaven forbid anybody ever tried to stop this guy from doing anything. It's pretty unbelievable. Yes, and mentioning their families does seem like a veiled threat. It's not even a veiled threat after all the judicial attacks that have happened. All right. Mark Reinfeld, good to see you. Thank you for joining and thank you for subscribing. Really appreciate you. Trump also suggested that those who ruled against his birthright citizenship order would be dumb in a post on Truth Social on Monday. Remember that he also owns Truth Social, and that's also worth billions of dollars, even though it has no traffic and no revenue. Hilarious. Ignoring his own program for immigrants to buy Trump-branded gold or platinum cards for $1 million in exchange for citizenship, Trump once again invoked an unproven conspiracy theory that Chinese people are paying people to engage in a shady birth tourism scheme to populate the U.S. with Chinese people. Which is why he's deporting all the Venezuelans and the Latinos, right? But now, allegedly, an Asian person died in ICE custody over the weekend. Birthright citizenship is not about rich people from China and the rest of the world who want their children and hundreds of thousands more for pay to ridiculously become citizens of the United States of America. It's about the babies of slaves. Dude, he's just unhinged. He's a lunatic. He's posting all this to Truth Social. He's not posting it on Twitter. He's not posting it on Facebook. He's got pages all these other places still. He's still only posting it on Truth because he loves his echo chamber and his bots. Dumb judges and justices will not a great country make. Like, you could just hear him screaming and crying and whining constantly. Like, he's just such a little whiny bitch. Like, for a guy who acts like such a tough guy. But I guess that's how bullies are when you punch them in the mouth. And he's been punched in the mouth just about everywhere because people realize and they learn pretty quickly. All right. Next, you've now got, I found this article that I found interesting. This is from Democracy at Work, started by Professor Richard Wolff. They advocate for worker co-ops and for workers in general. And they wrote this article about birthright citizenship, about Trump wanting to redefine who belongs like fascists always do. And yes, Angel Rivera, Trump is just cutting a wrestling promo. He's talking crap to his bots and his supporters on Truth Social. Absolutely. That's why he's in the WWE Hall of Fame. Good evening, Lady Alex M. How are you? Yes, go start. He's a cry bully for sure. All right. So this article that I found interesting by David Cobb, he goes under Redneck Gone Green. The concept of birthright citizenship is simple and easy to understand. Anyone born in the country automatically becomes a citizen of that country. Full unconditional birthright citizenship is common across the Western Hemisphere. The U.S., Canada, Mexico, most of Latin America do it. In the U.S., it's literally enshrined in our Constitution. The text of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution is clear and unambiguous. All persons born in the United States are citizens. Not some, not those with the right parents, all. Trump's attempt to twist subject to the jurisdiction thereof into an exclusion for immigrants is not an interpretation. It's political repression dressed up as law. So, Trump's attack on birthright citizenship isn't just wrong on the law. Let me go back here. Okay, it's a blatant and dangerous attempt to assert imperial executive power over a constitutional guarantee. And let's be blunt about the history of the 14th Amendment. It was written to overturn the profane and odious Dred Scott v. Sanford decision. That case had held that black people, whether enslaved or free, were not citizens of the United States and had no rights that the federal government was bound to respect. The 14th Amendment was passed specifically to prevent ruling elites from deciding who counts as a person with rights. Birthright citizenship was meant to be automatic, universal, and beyond political manipulation. Weakening it reopens the door to exactly the kind of radicalized caste system Reconstruction tried to abolish. As a lawyer, this writer is here to say this is what we call well-settled law. In the landmark 1898 decision of the U.S. v. Wong Kim Ark, the Supreme Court held that children born on U.S. soil are citizens, even when their parents are not. Trump's bullshit legal theory only works if the court is willing to shred more than a century of precedent and destabilize millions of lives, which I'm worried that they might. What's really at stake is power. If Donald Trump can redefine citizenship by executive order, then constitutional rights become contingent, subject to political winds, nationalist fear, an imperial overreach. That's not immigration policy. That's a direct threat to the rule of law. Note that Trump personally attended the oral arguments. And again, this is the first time in history a sitting U.S. president has attended oral arguments in the Supreme Court chamber. This is not normal. It's a display of power meant to intimidate and erode the independence of the Supreme Court of the United States. When a political strongman inserts himself directly into the judicial process, it should be setting off alarms. The question that's being considered is simple. Will the court uphold a democratic constitution grounded in universal rights? Or are they going to enable a system where the state decides who belongs? Birthright citizenship is not a loophole. It's a line in the sand. I totally agree with him. This is like one of these things that like you literally have to this is where you got to stand up. Like, because, and I'm going to play a couple of videos right now, like, what does this mean for all of us as U.S. citizens ourselves, as dissidents? They're talking about taking away our fucking citizenship for speaking out against the Trump administration, if you haven't figured this all out by now yet. So let's go. So this is traveling nurse Alexis Rose. I know that Dissent in Bloom follows her also. Let's refresh and let's start her from the beginning here.
Court is hearing arguments in Trump v. Barbara, which is the landmark case that could decide the future of birthright citizenship in the United States. At stake is a fundamental promise of the Constitution that every child born here will get citizenship, with very few exceptions. And despite multiple federal courts already ruling this executive order as unconstitutional, the Supreme Court is considering a case that could overturn over a century of settled law and put the future rights of generations to come at stake. But what is the history of birthright citizenship? Let's chat about the Civil War. After the Civil War, the Reconstruction amendments to the Constitution overturned the horrible Dred Scott decision, which said that the children of formerly enslaved Black people were not citizens. And it clarified what had long been law in the United States, that birthright citizenship did not depend on the race nor citizenship of your parents. And since 1868, that citizenship guarantee has been enshrined in what we call the 14th Amendment. This is not just a legal debate. This could decide the future of hundreds of thousands of people. Because ending birthright citizenship would leave hundreds of thousands of Americans without recognition and without statehood. This effort is part of a broader push to redefine who belongs in America by targeting immigrants, separating families, and expanding systems of detention and deportation. To babies, they're expanding those systems to include babies. But the Constitution is crystal clear. The 14th Amendment guarantees citizenship to those born here, regardless of the citizenship or immigration status of their parents. That principle has stood for over a century, and it defines who we are as a nation. I'm partnering with the ACLU to raise awareness. The ACLU is calling on the public to show their unwavering support to safeguarding the right of birthright citizenship. We cannot stay silent. This is such a pivotal moment in our country's history. So please pay attention, make noise, and demand we safeguard this fundamental right. Today,
and one of the other things we need to do is talk about this with people like the normies in our lives. This is like something that they'll all be behind as well. I don't know of anybody really opposed to this. And the minute you lay out that they're actually doing this and trying to do this, like, wait, they're what? No, I'm not down with that. All right, where do I got to go? Where do I got to sign? What do I need to do? You got to be prepared. You got to have an answer for what to do and what steps to take. And this is another person that has another point that I don't know them, but this was an interesting thing that I didn't have an answer to, so I thought we should discuss it. Let's refresh this, which is How do we prove we're
Birthright
citizens?
citizenship, how do we prove we're citizens? That's a question I just saw over on Threads this beautiful Sunday morning, and I have to tell you, that's the whole point. That's the ball game, baby. That's the reason they're doing it. They want to dictate who gets to call themselves an American. When Stephen Miller said he wants the United States population to hover around 100 million people, he meant it. Not only are they trying to dictate who gets to be an American, they're trying to dictate who gets to vote. That's the SAVE Act. Because when Steve Bannon said, if they win midterms, we're going to jail, he also meant that. Now, you might be saying, Amy, the SAVE Act is just an ID law. Yes, but the people who control the government get to tell you in person whether or not your paperwork is good enough. Or if you're applying for a passport, they control the passport office. When one party controls everything, they get to change laws and the legality and the nature of existing right underneath us. And that's what they're trying to do. Now, I'm grateful that a lot of people are picking up on what's happening. Some of us have been screaming about it for over a decade. Some of us have been organizing for the last year and a half, 2 years, hard, boots on the ground. And it is frustrating that until it affects you, you don't want to have this conversation. Is it easier to put your head in the sand? Yeah. But every single thing that this government does to any single one of us is what they'd like to do to all of us. This is why I talk about prisoners' rights, because the way we treat our prisoners is indicative of what they want to do to all of us. The way they treat our immigrants is indicative of what they would like to do to all of us. The through line between this unholy matrimony of the Heritage Foundation, tech bros, and the evangelicals in this country is subjugation. They have been looking for free and or cheap labor since 1865. And the country that we have right now is being ripped apart and sold out from under us. That is what's happening. And they want to dictate who is American and who is voting so that they can keep it going, so that they can make money hand over fist, even after Trump dies, because he is dying right in front of us. We're watching him die in slow motion. I'm grateful that people are picking up on what's going on. I am frustrated it took you so long.
Yeah, I feel that. And I probably took a little longer than she would have wanted to. But I just thought that all this stuff about birthright citizenship, by the way, was also part of the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025 agenda, was to attack birthright citizenship for a lot of reasons. But it's also so that if we get our citizenship removed, we literally are people, we're countryless. That means we can't travel. Like, do you want to lose your ability to travel? That's your way to do it, at least outside the country. You're now locked within these borders. Quick way to do it. Freak. Absolutely freaky. Okay. So that was that was our first segment over here. And yeah, so let's see. A lot of people had some stuff to say about that, because birthright is like a real thing if they're really trying to take that away. Don't worry about what comes out of Trump's mouth. I agree, Karen, to a point. I'm convinced his implanted brain computer interface either glitching or he didn't pay the system upgrade fee. And that's probably true, but he's not even in control, and he's not writing that script. And we know that. Right? He's definitely on easy mode at this point. And he's, some of the stuff, I mean, the unhinged shit that came out of his account this weekend on Easter Sunday was not something befitting a president, and something that I feel was designed to intentionally cause people to beg for the 25th Amendment and for J.D. Vance to be installed. That's what I see happening here. Wow, my throat's all dry. Right. Angel saying that he learned about the Dred Scott in his case in his intro to law class. Yep, it is a landmark case in the Supreme Court. That was that the 3/5 law, or that again determined that at that point people of color were not granted the right to vote or citizenship, and then the 14th Amendment changed all that. Okay, Trump is confused on what oral arguments meant, so that's why he wanted to show up. Oh, that's frightening, but maybe even true. Karen, yep. Okay. Angel, no, could not possibly be bullied. We know that, especially if he's bringing chicken wings. He's not going to be bullied. So, Himbo, good to see you. We got a bunch of people showing up here over from Substack. I'm happy to see everyone over here. And yeah, JD Vance is not any better, and he might actually be worse because he represents that Christian fundamentalist wing that Dissent in Bloom has been researching, and how they've been setting this up for decades also. Like all of this. They have contingencies for their contingencies, and there's more than one JD Vance. I made that prediction that they didn't just put all their eggs in his basket either. They've got a bunch of him basically sitting in the wings, ready to go. So if things went a different way, they could tap into that resource that they've been cultivating for decades as well. So I wanted to, before we do that, support independent media because we need it more than ever. Like I saw Mark Reinfeld show up in the chat tonight on Substack. Thank you, Mark Reinfeld, for supporting at IndieNewsNow.com. Picked up a monthly subscription this week. Thank you so much. Other ways to do that without fees or minimal fees are with Cash App, $ Indie News Network, at co-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network, patreon.com/Indie News Network, at IndieNewsNow.com, at INNNewsletter.com, again, where Mark picked up a monthly, and at IndieMediaToday.com, where you can pick up a monthly or an annual subscription. It's like $45 for an annual subscription. That's the majority of my annuals. Lady Alex M was one of the last people to do so, and I really appreciate her doing so. It meant a lot. Okay, so we're going to talk about how I feel like we're getting our asses kicked in Iran, and that is why we saw this kind of, it was a Mexican standoff, which I know is just culturally inappropriate. We wouldn't say that normally, but it was a pissing contest, and he had to blink today. You know, he's been threatening and blustering and talking all kinds of smack about Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. We're going to do it. And then at the last minute, he pulls back. We're going to give it another 2 weeks. Nobody negotiated. Nobody said a word, allegedly. And nothing changed, but still, yet we're all here, thankfully. We're at Armageddon plus 2 hours, thankfully. And I wanted to bring a couple of things that show that a country and the side that is winning does not do this. At least not in my mind. First of all, Al Jazeera confirmed that the U.S. and Israel had bombed over 760 schools and 350 health centers in Iran. These are all war crimes. And Rabina Qureshi said, I curse them. I think we all do. I also have somewhat of a slight question over that number, honestly, because that seems awful high, but it's the Israel plan to target health centers and schools, so it wouldn't terribly surprise me. Though I would think there would be more of an outroar if there would be that level, but I mean, with the way corporate media brainwashes people, I guess not. All right. The next thing that I found was that in TRT world, which is, I believe, is from Turkey, the WHO reported that there are over 20 strikes on Iran health facilities since early March. All right. So again, 350 health centers, and here you're hearing 20 health facilities. So I don't know what the real answer is. Gandhi Hospital in Tehran was definitely one of them, and you can see how that's bombed out and destroyed now. All right, and this is part of the problem with war reporting, and the reason why I don't want to bring real-time reporting on war is because it's steeped with propaganda from both sides. We have no idea what's really happening, and will likely not have any idea what's happening until days or weeks afterwards, when it all settles out and you hear from the people who were actually on the ground as to what happened versus the generals and the press offices and the media that are trying to spin a story and sell clicks. Okay? So again, the WHO chief, Tedros, who's not a good dude at all, said early Friday that Iran saw over 20 attacks on its healthcare since early March. I think that's a mass understatement and a gross undercount from what it sounds like, but that's verified over 20 attacks on healthcare in Iran. How is the WHO even verifying attacks in Iran? I don't know. Resulting in at least 9 deaths, including that of an infectious diseases health worker and a member of the Iranian Red Crescent Society. We had heard that they were blowing up ambulances left, right, and sideways, and destroying infrastructure, and blowing up bridges, and doing all the same things that they did in Lebanon, and that they did in Gaza, and that they did in Syria. Okay? Tedros also noted that multiple attacks on healthcare had been reported in Tehran in recent days, targeting the Pasteur Institute. That was the next thing I was going to bring. All right? Delaram Sina Psychiatric Hospital and the Tawfiq Daru Pharmaceutical Facility. So why are you, again, this is the Israel plan, which is to attack the infrastructure, the healthcare infrastructure, so that the sick can't get healthy again. So that all of a sudden they're running out of anesthesia. And now they're having to operate without basic supplies and painkillers. And just awful. The conflict Iran and in the region is impacting the delivery of health services and the safety of health workers, patients, and civilians present in health facilities. He won't mention where it's coming from, by the way. This coward will not once mention Israel. He will not at all, Tedros, mention that Israel is the one that's causing all of this, and the United States. Coward. Now, Dissented Bloom also weighed in on this one. A U.S.-Israeli airstrike struck an orphanage west of Tehran, resulting in 2 fatalities, according to Iranian media. Orphanages. The U.S. and Israel are bombing orphanages. Because when you're winning, you bomb orphanages, right? And this was her watching CNN, which, boo, hiss, how dare you? No, CNN, never. Anyway, like I said, you've got to go to all sides, but you've got to take it all with a grain of salt. But this is what Press TV from Iran was reporting about the Pasteur Institute being bombed and destroyed. All right, this is also very important. Okay, Iran has condemned a U.S.-Israeli attack on Pasteur Institute, one of the country's oldest public health institutions, as a barbaric assault on basic human core values. Yes, every single person connected to this should be brought up on war crimes tribunal charges and strung up, from Hegseth to Trump to Vance to Rubio, every single one of these motherfuckers from every country involved, Starmer and Macron and every one of them that's behind this and didn't stop it. In a post to Twitter, all right, Ismail Bagahai reacted to the U.S.-Israeli attack on the Pasteur Institute, established over a century ago as a research, production, service, and educational center. So they attack the academic institutions. They attack the children so that the parents are preoccupied and can't work because they have to take care of the children. They attack the healthcare system so they can't get adequate health care. And then they blow up the houses and turn them into refugees. That is the systematic Israeling of the entire Middle East. And they think that this is a way to make it great. Holy crap. Israel's got to go. They have to be punished for for attacking sovereign nations. They've got to lose their charter as a sovereign nation and stop being recognized by other countries, which may also mean they need to stop recognizing the United States as well. Because anybody that's funding and arming, that means the UK as well, stop recognizing us as a legitimate country as well. We are a regime, a terrorist-led regime on top of it. All right. This is not merely another war crime committed as part of an illegal war. It's a barbaric assault on basic human core values. All right. Throughout its century-long history, it's played a key role in controlling many infectious diseases in both the country and worldwide. Since 1920, the Institute has been one of the pioneers and key hubs of vaccine production in the region. Not anti-vaxxers here. We don't, when they are tested and they are safe and effective, that actually does work to prevent disease. The U.S.-Israeli war against Iran has also targeted a wide range of civilian infrastructure. Again, you don't do this when you're winning. You do this when you're losing, so that the side you're attacking can't recover themselves. Wow. Among the most devastating attacks was the infamous bombing of the Minab school, which we talked about. Additionally, residential homes, hospitals, pharmaceutical centers have been hit. Israeli missiles struck that major pharmaceutical company in Tehran on Tuesday morning, completely destroying its raw material production units and its research and development unit. Why? Well, we heard about them also attacking the pistachio factories and farms. Why? Because the Resnicks are big donors to the IDF. So they were doing their donors, their funders, a favor and attacking an industry competitor. And a lot of people say that the reason why we're doing all of this is to be able to have control over global oil prices. And, you know, the benefactors, the oil companies, they want access to the drilling rights and to control over all the oil worldwide. So, of course, the B1 bridge in Karaj, one of the country's tallest bridges and considered a major engineering achievement, was targeted in a U.S.-Israeli strike, and our baby of a president bragged about destroying that, and it will never be built. I'll bet you they end up getting it built. But it was a marvel in engineering, and it was close to being completed. Fucking mess. Okay, fuck Israel and fuck the Trump administration. Heartbreaking, cruel, and despicable, and utterly outrageous. The American-Israeli aggressors have attacked the Pasteur Institute, the oldest and most prestigious research and public health center in Iran and the entire Middle East. And this is what some of the rubble looks like. It's a disgrace. Okay, we're hitting bridges, also struck overnight. And nobody's reporting on this. I don't see very many people reporting on this. Likely because they're not really reading Press TV, would be my guess. All right, presstv.co.uk is an alternative way to access it if the .ir is blocked in your country. And I wanted to bring one other article from Anti-War News Indie Media Award honoree. And this is more about if you are winning, you don't try to control the narrative like this. So this is an article by Alan Mosley, republished over at antiwar.com. U.S. satellite firm blacks out Iran war images per U.S. government request. Wait a minute. So now we're getting our asses kicked so badly, they don't want anyone to see it. Because that's basically outside of footage from on the ground that's allowed outside the country, we have no way of seeing footage from within Iran. Planet Labs says it will indefinitely withhold satellite visuals of Iran and the wider Middle East war zone after a request from the U.S. government and the Trump administration. Why? Probably because they get access. In an email to customers, the firm said it's shifting to a managed distribution model, releasing imagery only case by case for urgent mission critical requirements or when release is deemed in the public interest. Who makes that designation? Planet also said it will withhold imagery dating back to March 9th, and it expects the policy to remain in effect until the conflict ends. On March 6th, Planet Labs announced a mandatory 96-hour delay on new imagery collected over the Gulf states, arguing that the near real-time pictures could be exploited to endanger allied NATO and civilian personnel. Well, then get them the fuck out of there. That measure later expanded into a 14-day delay, described by Planet as an extension of the earlier hold. By March 30th, Al Jazeera's Digital Investigations Unit was reporting that independent verification had become harder as commercial providers restricted satellite imagery. So now it's only for us. Satellite imagery matters because, unlike press briefings, it can corroborate damage, assess patterns of targeting, and check narratives that would otherwise be accepted on authority. No more trust me, bro. We've got pictures. Reporting by the Global Investigative Journalism Network describes how open source teams use satellite imagery and videos to probe contested incidents during this war, quoting Bellingcraps, head of research, warning that a 2-week delay slows verification and reduces the certainty investigators can reach while events are still developing. So what this tells me is the CIA didn't even want this to happen. When was the last time you saw anybody talk about Bellingcat? Ever. Okay? But if they've now got Eoin Higgins talking about this shit and crying about a 2-week delay, and now they've just put a blatant hold. So now what that tells me also is that the CIA is now flying blind and not getting access to this data through this channel. They're going to have to go directly to Trump for it. That's crazy. Bellingcat is a CIA cutout, for those who don't know. All right. That's crazy. Open source is not the place to determine what did or did not happen. Quotes the defense secretary. Fuck you, Pete. Whiskey Pete. Yeah, you're not the person to determine what did or didn't happen either. All right. This is a satellite image, all right, from March 3rd, before they put the blackout in place. It doesn't look like that now. Despite the insinuation that open source investigative journalism is less credible, even mainstream news organizations utilize such tools in their reporting. That's yeah, that's an insane assertion. For example, Reuters has also used satellite imagery in its war coverage, including sharing said imagery and post-strike visuals with a munitions researcher in reporting on the strike in Minab, which killed over 170 people, mostly children. Don't you get that's why they want to restrict the visuals? They don't want you to be able to confirm that they did this level of murdering. While later reporting added that the strike may have involved outdated targeting intelligence, it's worth noting that the president claimed without evidence that Iran was responsible, which could have been refuted with satellite imagery, which again is why they're trying to hide it. One can concede that operational security is real and still recognize that trust us is an unsafe substitute for public evidence. That's an understatement. In mid-March, the White House claimed Iran's ballistic missile capacity was functionally destroyed with complete and total aerial dominance. While reporting in the same period, described continued missile incidents and interceptions. So which was it? But of course, the Trump administration's claim of total control over Iranian airspace seems dubious when countered with reports of military losses, such as the downing of multiple aircraft just since the start of April. But good luck getting satellite imagery to prove that out. I mean, at least not from the U.S. Now you got to go to the Chinese. Now you got to go to the Russians. The blackout of satellite imagery from the region is not a story about one firm's products or customer service. It's a reminder that foreign intervention tends to produce domestic control, often without the drama of a formal censorship order. The same state that wages war can narrow the evidence available to judge that war. The predictable result is that the public is pushed to take the word of the administration's spokesman at face value. God forbid you took Todd Blanche or what's her name, the press secretary, at face value without timely means to verify or falsify their claims. Again, exactly their point and their goal. They don't want you to be able to catch them in the moment. Catch them later, yeah, fine. It's all done. They don't give a shit. The writer of this article, by the way, Alan Mosley, is a historian, jazz musician, policy researcher for the 10th Amendment Center, and the host of It's Too Late, the number one self-described number one late show in America, not hosted by a communist. Fuck this guy already. All right, this is a decent article, but come on. It is on anti-war, which is the libertarian, a Libertarian Institute publication. But I would consider them the least libertarian of all the libertarians. and that's a compliment, because fuck all political parties. Okay, so that was my assessment of what's happening in Iran right now. Again, I'm glad that cooler heads have apparently prevailed and talked poopy pants off the rooftop and decided to give us 2 more weeks like the money pit. I mean, we heard 2 weeks for the tariffs too, and a lot of shit never ended up happening. And hopefully this is just a lot of bluster that he can back off from as well. I mean, that's my hope. I don't want to see anybody bombed. I don't want to see escalation like this. I want to see us get the fuck out of there. All right. Now, Kit is praising a libertarian. Which one? Larry? Well, Kit, Larry, what's his name? That's his buddy. He's got a buddy who's a libertarian. He's a good dude too. I disagree with him vehemently, but he's a buddy of Kit's. He's Larry Sharp. That's his name. Thank you. All right. Yes. Kit is buddies with a libertarian. Look, a lot of us are friends with libertarians. We like smoke weed. We like free press. We just disagree vehemently when it comes to healthcare, and we're anti-war. So, I get down with libertarians until it gets to healthcare. And what do you do with the people that can't work? Because they're all about, freedom and choice and, bootstrap type of stuff. And my question to them always is, how do you account for when 1/3 of your population can't work either because they're children, elderly, or disabled? And I have never really heard a good answer for that, personally. So, anyway, support independent media because we need it more than ever. The ways to do that are up there on that board. Cash App, $ Indie News Network. Go-v.com/Indie News Network. At paypal.me/Indie News Network as friends and family. Patreon.com/Indie News Network if you want to go monthly or annually. IndieNewsNow.com is our website where you can leave a tip directly, or over at Substack on INNnewsletter.com or at IndieMediaToday.com. Either one of those places, any of those, or a monthly subscription or a gift sub over on Rumble as well. Those are the ones that put the most money in our pockets of your support, which we greatly appreciate and need in order to keep the lights going. Restream bill, Canva bill, Zoom bill came this week. That was $180 or something like that. That's an annual thing. So we try to do the annuals because we save a little bit of money that way as well. Anyway, we are getting to our Fuck Israel segment. And this might be an extended one. And then we're going to get to the Dissent in Bloom article where we talk about Dilley Detention Center. And then we're going to talk about the lightning round and no kings and protesting and some other stuff there. Before we do all of that, go start investing in Legos. You know, I thought that was a great investment myself. I guess I don't have the right outlet for it yet. My son is a Lego machine, and we save the books and the boxes and the set, and it's on a shelf. Who wants to buy these things? I don't know, you know, because you're supposedly supposed to be able to sell them in a marketplace so that we can clear space on our shelves. We're running out of house and home, man. Like, it's crazy. But Lego sets seem to be a decent investment because they do hold their value. Right? 2 weeks to fatten the stonks. I hope not. I hope so. You know, the stock market being good is a good thing, but stock market being good because of war is a bad thing. So, yeah, I don't know where to shake out with that. I'd like it to be good because of technology and not because of the technocracy and surveillance state that's being implemented also, which is what I see sadly happening right now. All right, let's get to what Israel is up to because it's nightmarish. And again, I think a lot of people, because of what's happening in Iran and Trump being such a big distraction, they take their eye off of, and it's almost impossible to pay attention to all these different fuckeries that are happening around the world. And that's the best way to describe what's happening. I would call it fuckeries. So I go to my most trusted outlets. I go to Mondo Weiss. What does Mondo Weiss tell me? And by the way, this article, you could find it IndieNewsNow.com. There was a link to it there, and it goes right to here at Mondo Weiss. Israeli policies pose an existential threat to Palestinians in the West Bank. Why isn't there more resistance? Well, from whom? Not from the Palestinians, because you're going to find out why. Israeli settler pogroms, annexation, and economic strangulation are eroding Palestinian life in the West Bank. So why aren't we seeing more Palestinian resistance to the existential threat erasing their communities? All right. Now, my initial assessment is, well, because they're being beaten and destroyed, you know, they're having their fields burned and bullied into silence as this is happening. All right. Now, this is the aftermath of Israeli settler attacks on the Rawa area in the town of Sair, northeast of Hebron, March 30th. They burned out this car. Palestinian life is being slowly but systematically eroded in the West Bank. It's gotten to the point that the continued existence of Palestinians on their land is now legitimately called into question, but this basic fact doesn't seem to carry any weight for Palestinians in their daily lives, running contrary to the predictions of Israeli security officials that there would be an explosion among Palestinians in the West Bank during Ramadan. In recent years, the holy month has historically been a flashpoint period for Palestinian protest, given the intensification of Israeli restrictions on worshippers at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. Yet, Ramadan came and went, and Israel not only continued to impose restrictions on, but ramped them up under the pretext of safety measures amid the U.S.-Israeli war in Iran. For the first time in centuries, Muslim worshippers were unable to attend Eid prayers at Al-Aqsa, and the Palestinian street remained silent. Life in the West Bank under occupation is far different today from how it was even a year ago. The sense of uneasy normalcy that used to pervade daily life has been rendered completely untenable as Palestinians are robbed of any sense of safety amid renewed waves of Israeli settler rampages, claiming the lives of 7 Palestinians just last week, and raising the number of Palestinians killed by Israeli forces or settlers to 23 since the beginning of 2026. You don't hear about this stuff. The regularity of these attacks has pushed Palestinians into a daily rhythm of weighing personal safety against the need to carry on with their lives before even considering stepping out of their doors. It's so sad. Over 900 checkpoints, gates, and roadblocks have turned entire towns into caged enclaves, sometimes literally, while a surge of home demolitions, which we've covered, by Israeli forces reached 300 demolished homes in the first month and a half of this year. All of this occurs alongside the explicit Israeli policy goal of burying a Palestinian state, as articulated by hardline Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, who advocates for encouraging emigration and formalizing the annexation of vast parts of the West Bank to Israel, including World Heritage sites that have been around for thousands of years. They just want to steal them. This raises a perplexing question. Why aren't Palestinians resisting what can only be described as an existential threat to their presence on their land? Beneath this picture, there's another story that isn't usually told of how Palestinian society in the West Bank has been subjected to a systematic process of social, political, and economic devastation, weakening it to the point that Israel is able to accelerate its annexation of the West Bank without any significant blowback. Really sad. And here's the background: the economic subordination. There's a material basis underlying the apparent quiescence of Palestinians in the West Bank. Palestinian economy's structural dependence on Israel. That dependency is exercised through 2 main pillars: wages from Palestinian labor in Israel, and salaries from public sector jobs within the Palestinian Authority, as well as other donor-driven sectors like education. It's a vulnerability that isn't particularly new, resulting from years of decimation of Palestinian economic capabilities. According to social and economic researcher Jibril Muhammad, the Israeli occupation restricted the creation of new Palestinian industries since the 1970s and forced some existing factories to close. And think about if there were factories that had been around since the 70s and allowed to grow and thrive and flourish, the size of what those companies might be and all that's robbed. It reminds me of how Black Wall Street and how all the generational wealth was robbed from the African American community. Israeli architectural production flooded the market, and labor inside Israel provided more jobs and better wages, which in a few years turned the main Palestinian labor force into workers in the Israeli economy. This transformed the Palestinian labor force into one dependent on the Israeli economy as both a source of employment and consumption. This process continued after the creation of the Palestinian Authority, which signed the 1995 Paris Protocols, a set of agreements formalizing restrictions on Palestinian economic autonomy, which was supposed to be in exchange for like sovereignty or right of return or something. They got nothing in return. It only restricted them. The Paris Economic Protocol imposed limits on exports for Palestinians in the West Bank, their industrial development, and even what they can invest in. This further increased Palestinians' dependency on Israel for 2 main sources of income: labor and salaries, private sector and NGOs. All right, that's just the economic side. Then they got customs revenue, which, represents more than 60% of the Palestinian Authority's income, which directly impacts its ability to pay salaries of teachers, doctors, public workers who've been receiving only partial and irregular salaries since 2022. Imagine not knowing if you're going to get paid this month, but you still got to show up to work because somebody's got to. All right, here's the assault on Palestinian society. And this literally breaks down by each section. There's the one on civil society. All right, and then there was a third one there. But let's get to... Meanwhile, the Palestinian civil society's capacity to respond to the needs of the population has been gradually weakened over the years, intentionally by Israel. According to Mohammed, during the Second Intifada, Israeli military action targeted their Palestinian Authority institutions, weakening its capacity to live up to its responsibility of reconstruction and social services. This made the PA leave the space for nonprofit groups who increased their dependency on international aid, which created a system where local and international NGOs formed a complementary relation, relieving the PA of much of its social responsibility. But of course, once aid's blocked, what happens? Or restricted? Yet even these organizations are now being prevented from operating in Palestine. Like I said, in early January, Israel issued a ban over 37 international aid organizations, making it more difficult for Palestinian civil society in the West Bank to sustain its core function of providing relief and support to Palestinian communities. Like Doctors Without Borders. Israel had already designated several Palestinian organizations as terrorist groups back in 2021, shutting them down. Fuck Israel. Amid the crackdown on civil society, an entire generation of Palestinian youth in the West Bank has been exhausted in confronting Israeli occupation. A lot of them are in prison right now, potentially pending being executed by this law that we talked about last week. In 2015, the killing of a Palestinian student at Al-Quds University by Israeli forces triggered a wave of youth protests across West Bank. Some media outlets called it a third intifada. The protests, of course, were met with a heavy Israeli crackdown using live fire and mass arrests. Israeli forces even began to implement a shoot-to-kill policy against Palestinian youth at checkpoints, which was used to retroactively justify extrajudicial executions against Palestinians who looked suspicious, and then fabricated claims that they were carrying a knife. Israel also resumed its policy of withholding the bodies of slain Palestinians and revived its policy of punitive home demolitions. Yeah, they'll just destroy your house, make you homeless, displace you and your family. What are you going to do? Who are you going to complain to? These measures intensified in subsequent years, especially after the emergence of armed groups in 2021 and the escalation of Israeli raids there, which included airstrikes for the first time in 20 years in refugee camps back in 2022. Again, now they do this all the time in Gaza. Like, this is daily, sadly. Look at how they set the stage. At the level of political leadership, the PA continued to lose political legitimacy, and today the Palestinian political field is irrevocably fractured, the product of a crisis of political representation among all Palestinian political factions. Because A, Israel murders anyone that comes up that could be of substance at all. They want this entire area balkanized, and they want them all fighting with each other for power. If the Palestinians in the West Bank are not showing a mass reaction to the Israeli offensive against their existence, it's because they've been consistently reacting to Israeli policies for decades, all while being battered down in the process. It's not their fault. After October 7th, 2023, the conditions of Israeli domination were solidified into the wholesale assault on Palestinian existence that we see today. Resistance to these conditions now carries immense costs, namely arrest or death. And which of those two is worse? And it is an open question. Prison conditions for Palestinian detainees have worsened so dramatically that exposure to torture, starvation, beatings, and sexual violence has become a matter of Israeli policy. We've covered that extensively. The cumulative effect of this reality is to terrorize Palestinians into complacency. Who are the terrorists again? Yeah. Fuck Israel. It makes me so sad that I have to show this doctor again. In January 2025, I did a segment started by this man who was holding up a sign that looked just like this. Dr. Hussam Abu Safia, and it just said hashtag free Dr. Hussam Abu Safia. And he recorded a video, and there was a video recorded by hundreds of medical professionals from around the world. And he's still locked up 17 months later. April 4th, he posted this. I am a family doctor, and I joined the call by Dr. Halang Mofokeng in demanding the release of Dr. Hussam Abu Safia, who remains in Israeli captivity for over a year. He's been subjected to severe torture. Our medical colleagues have been targeted for doing their jobs. Release them all. Our concern is that Dr. Abu Safia had never been tried. And now that this law has been passed, that if they decide to try him, that court has a conviction rate of over 96%. There is no ability to appeal, and the execution must be carried out within 90 days by hanging. That is the way the law was written. So I commend Dr. Yipeng Ji, who is from Toronto, I remember. And he's also served in Gaza in medical units alongside Dr. Hussam Abu Safia. We talked about the law that was passed. Here's Asal Rod, professor. You won't see this headline in the New York Times. Again, this is Haaretz. This is what Israel is telling their own citizens. Racist and unlawful law. Israel's death penalty law is driven by bloodlust. Couldn't agree more. More about the law that was passed. Our own Reef Breland over at INN said, where do you even buy these? Meaning the noose pins that are on Ben Gvir and all of his buddies, all of his terrorist buddies. I can only assume you have to go to KKK Jewelers. Every clan begins with K. All right. So, yep, they really did wear those for months around the Knesset. And we're celebrating with champagne last week when that law passed. Council of State Media, Ricky. Israel having the death penalty for Palestinians, but not for Israelis, is like if the U.S. had the death penalty for only Native Americans, or if Australia had the death penalty for only Aborigines. It's clearly and unambiguously a racist law. Amen. All right, I got a couple more. Doctor, I think he's a doctor, Ahmed Nashwan. Gaza is now under intense and relentless bombardment that has not stopped for hours, with ground incursions advancing near the displaced camps, and new waves of displacement are happening across different areas of Gaza. Please don't stop talking about Gaza, because that's one of the distractions that Israel is trying to affect here. is that you can't possibly keep your eye on the West Bank and Gaza and Lebanon and Syria and Iran and all these places where they are messing people up and murdering people and stealing territory. All right. And on top of all of that, a guy who I'm not really a follower of, but he shared a Gen X girl post about Argentina accepting 300,000 Israelis and creating a mini state there. Let's see what else Israel's up to. They're creating a mini state in Argentina. They're buying 40 Greek islands. That's a new one. Establishing a new Jerusalem in Ukraine. Zelensky was there solidifying that. They're already running an independent oblast in Russia. And Putin admitted that there are 2 million Russians in Israel and that they're practically one and the same. And of course, Israel is also annexing the Gaza, the West Bank, and South Lebanon. Kitty, he's not here. I just grabbed a tweet of his where he had called it every kill begins with K. And that the KKK is where you have to go get one of those news pins. Anyway, but yes, while simultaneously all of this is happening, they're passing anti-Semitism laws and establishing armed private security forces inside every Western nation. Crazy. And again, few people are stopping this, and a lot of them are cheering it on, sadly enough, because they don't really see what's happening and where it's going. Finally, let's not forget that stuff's happening in Lebanon. I talked about Lebanon a lot last week and how they dropped all the bridges on the Litani River and have a plan to annex and bomb the entire area south of the Litani River right to their border, which is hundreds of towns and thousands of people that are now going to be murdered, displaced. I don't even know what. But Sarah's point, Israel killed 3 Indonesian U.S. peacekeepers in southern Lebanon. They were wearing blue helmets. They were in UN uniforms. They were peacekeepers. Israel bombed them anyway. Not a peep in Western media. Not a word from the international community. Kick Israel out of the UN. And delegitimize them as a country entirely. I'm totally for that. And this is the funeral that was held. Of course, I'll have to mute that naturally. Because here's their coffins being carried by UN peacekeepers. Peacekeepers murdered by a sovereign member of the United Nations. And nobody does anything. What a disgrace. Fuck Israel. Okay, that wasn't as long as I thought it would be. Okay. Well, that was a bunch of stuff that Israel's up to right now. Southern Lebanon, West Bank, Argentina, Gaza. What else? I think that's all I covered tonight. And of course, Iran, that they're heavily involved with as well. And that's a lot for one tiny little Middle Eastern country that should not have nearly the impact over the entire world that it does. It's I don't even know what to say at this point. Like, you know, I'm up to Reef's point, like, which is, what do you say when fuck Israel isn't enough? I say it every week, and I wholeheartedly believe that it should not exist as a country, that their leadership should all be put up against a wall for the war crimes that they committed, that Palestine should be returned to the Palestinian people, and that the settlers that are there should be expelled and sent back to Europe or wherever the fuck they came from. Absolute belief in all of those things. We call it bombing. They call it spreading freedom. I don't like their definition of freedom either. All right. All right. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. I did not go to one corporate source there. TRT, kind of. But they're not corporate. That's state TV. But I did want to get that perspective, and you're only going to get the footage of the peacekeepers from TRT. So, support independent media. The ways to do that are up there. Cash App, $, Indie News Network. Ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. PayPal.me/Indie News Network as a friends and family. At Patreon.com/Indie News Network for monthly. IndieNewsNow.com to leave a one-time tip. Over at INN Newsletter or IndieMediaToday.com over on Substack, where you can subscribe monthly or annually, either one. Okay, so we're going to get to the story about Dilley Detention Center and about the kids. And this is heartbreaking. So trigger warning, this is going to have some stuff in there about, kids' depression and how children are being affected by ICE detention. Descent Bloom, who's, I think, she's still in chat, wrote a brilliant article here detailing a lot of the story, just a small portion of the story that is happening to families all over the country, not just in this detention center, which is the largest family detention center in the ICE family. It's funny. It's a family of whatever you want to call it, a group, and the ICE group of private detention centers, because remember, this is also a private facility. We're going to get to that. So, our article starts at the children of Dilley inside the human rights crisis at Texas's largest family detention facility. Now, remember that we also, several weeks ago, talked about Dilley because Liam Ramirez was there and he wasn't doing well. We talked about Dilley because Miss Rachel has made a concerted effort to try to get Dilley shut down as a facility because of the things, and Descent's going to talk about this. So, Dilley is a town of about 4,000 people between San Antonio and the Mexican border, and there's nothing remarkable about it except that it's home to the South Texas Family Residential Center, the only family detention facility in the United States, because nothing says family values like a government contract with the second largest private prison company in the U.S., CoreCivic. Since CoreCivic reopened the facility in March of 2025, under a contract worth $180 million a year, more than 3,500 people have cycled through. That's what we're paying them for. Now, I say people, but I should be more specific. More than half of those 3,500 people were children, little kids. Kids who have favorite stuffed animals and bedtime stories. And she's linking to some of these ProPublica articles that were published about life inside Dilley. So let me tell you what $180 million a year buys us. It buys you children held for weeks and months. It buys us food with worms in it, mold on it. It buys us, as a society, medical care so negligent that nearly a dozen 911 calls have been placed from inside the building. A 2-month-old baby choking on his own vomit, developing severe complications and only being transferred to a hospital when his condition turned critical. And then, while that baby was still sick, his family was deported. They didn't wait for him to get better. They deported a sick infant. Another 8 or 9-year-old, they don't even know, child seized on the floor, and when someone finally responded, The staff couldn't provide a name or age to emergency services because nobody had bothered to learn it. That child was in their care, and they didn't know who that child was. Absolute fucking monsters. A 13-year-old girl used a plastic knife from the cafeteria to try to end her own life. That's the cafeteria of a place we call a family residential center. Family residential center. I need you to picture a child you love. Picture the blanket they drag around. Picture the way they laugh. Picture the person they run to when they're scared. Now picture that child in a federal detention facility, sleeping under fluorescent lights, eating food that makes them sick, and crying for a home they may never see again. Some of these kids are so young, they won't remember anything before this. This will be their first memory. Trauma. From drilling oil to caging kids. In the summer of 2024, 70,000 families arrived at the southwest border. 2014, not 2024. Summer of 2014. I believe that was the convoy. The Obama administration built Dilley as the response. Before that, the land it lies on was known as Sendero Ranch, a camp for oil field workers. A map. This is a map of empire in motion. U.S. hands all over Latin America moving money, power, coups, sanctions, bases, and blood across the hemisphere. The families at the border in 2014 were running from violence. Ours specifically built deliberately over 50 years, one coup at a time from Central America. That was through Honduras and Ecuador. And this was the convoy. I remember that. It was one of the things that Trump was railing about when he was running for president the first time. The original contract structure looked less like public administration and more like a laundering operation with government letterhead. The kind of shell game ICE has been running in state after state for years through IGSA contracts. So this is a 3-step shell game, a 4-step, that runs through the city of Eloy, Arizona. And she's going to talk about that in a minute. Congress appropriates the money. Federal law requires competitive bidding, federal oversight, and review eligibility, and taxpayer cost-benefit analysis, which all get bypassed because local governments operate under different contracting rules. So they contract through taxpayer funds via a middleman, okay, a local government of the city of Eloy, Arizona, which has no facility, no staff, and no capacity, and skims a small administrative fee off the top. And then you get no competitive selection, no public solicitation, contract effectively handed to CoreCivic directly, with an ICE lawyer's memo that this was not legally advisable. Senior officials ignored it. Crazy. If you saw a photograph of Dilley with no context, you might think it was a fucking summer camp. And that's exactly what CoreCivic wants you to think. On their website, the company making $180 million a year off of Dilley, they'll tell you about the bunk beds and the classrooms and the rooms full of toys. What CoreCivic will not tell you is that since last year, children are eating food with worms in it, that a 2-month-old aspirated on his own vomit, and that when someone finally carried that baby to the medical unit, there was no doctor there. That's a Democracy Now! Story. These are some of the letters that were in a graphic that ProPublica had published. These are not new problems either. Back in 2018, an 18-month-old girl named Marie Juarez died because Dilley's medical staff failed to treat her respiratory infection. The former president of the American Academy of Pediatrics reviewed her records and called the care neglectful and substandard. Again, that's the point here. The punishment is the point. But remember who was president back in 2018 at the time, too. Trump inherited Dilley once before. Under Biden, family detention actually ended at Dilley in 2021. Those kids in cages, there were so few that they actually closed Dilley. The facility eventually closed entirely in August of 2024 for about 9 months. But shortly after, CoreCivic stock dropped 20% on the news. That, by the way, was when Kamala Harris announced she was running for president and taking over for Biden. So you've got to think about all these things in context. In 2025, Trump takes office. By March, CoreCivic announced a new 5-year contract through restructured IGSA with the city of Dilley, projecting roughly $180 million in annual revenue. Pretty good projection. By the way, CoreCivic and its CEO donated roughly $800,000 to Trump, and since has had a 45% increase in ICE contracts. They've collected hundreds of millions in new contracts, with billions locked in through 2029. Their CEO, Damon Hinninger, called it one of the most exciting periods in my career. $800,000 for billions in contracts. I'd say that's a sizable return on investment. That's why they keep bribing people. Now we get to Liam. On January 20th this year, a 5-year-old boy came home from school and there were federal agents in his driveway. We covered this story extensively on this show. Liam Conejo Ramos is from Ecuador. His family had done everything right. They came to the border. They applied for asylum. They showed up for their court dates. They followed every rule. None of it mattered because when Liam got home from pre-K that day, men in plain clothes put him in the back of a black SUV. He was wearing a blue bunny hat and a Spider-Man backpack, and someone snapped a picture, and the whole world saw it. According to school officials who witnessed it, they walked the 5-year-old to his own front door and used him as bait to coax his pregnant mother outside. His mother watched from the window, terrified, while her husband begged her not to open the door because he was afraid they'd arrest her too. After traumatizing the entire family, ICE flew Liam and his father to Texas on Delta Airlines. Boycott Delta if you're able to. They put him in Dilley. He was 5. In 11 days, he stopped eating. He started throwing up. He got a fever. His father said he was sleeping all the time, asking for his mom, asking for his friends from school. A congresswoman came to visit and said his eyes never opened. A federal judge ordered him released on January 31st and called the whole thing driven by a perfidious lust for unbridled power. He put Liam's photo in the ruling next to 2 Bible verses. Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." And Jesus wept. Appropriate considering that Easter was this past weekend. A congressman flew the boy home the next day. That was Joaquin Castro. The whole country watched a 5-year-old walk back through his front door, and you'd think that would be the end of it. But, of course, with this administration, it wasn't. God forbid they were ever embarrassed or shamed or took an L, ever. In February, barely days after Liam got home, DHS filed to expedite his family's removal. The family's attorney, Danielle Moliver, called it retaliatory. Huh? DHS said there was nothing retaliatory about it. Standard procedure, they said. Enforcing the nation's immigration laws. In March, immigration judge John Burns, who was appointed as an acting chief immigration judge in January of 2026, denied the family's asylum claim entirely and ordered them deported to Ecuador. The family never got to present testimony. Moliver said they were hopeful they would at least get their day in court. They didn't. So here's where we are. Liam is back in school for now. He still wears the blue bunny hat, but only inside the house because he doesn't want to be recognized. He's 5. His 13-year-old brother's in school. Their mother's pregnant. Every member of the family is seeing a therapist. The appeal's been filed. The government has until April 28th to respond. It could take months. It could take years. And every single day, this family wakes up not knowing if today is the day they lose everything. Liam's father was asked what he would say to the president if he could. He said he would talk to them about the children, about how they're being separated from their parents and suffering. He said he would ask him to show more feeling, more heart. That would be impossible because Trump has no feelings or heart. He's asking the United States of America to have a heart. That's where we are. Before Liam left, something happened. The other families found out about him. And on January 24th, hundreds of children walked out of the dormitories and started chanting one word, Libertad, freedom. The foundational promise of the country that holds them captive. Children in a detention center had to remind America what America is supposed to mean. Guards blocked the doors. ICE vehicles circled the building. The children didn't stop. Kids who were scared. Kids who didn't know where they were or when they were going to go home. But kids who knew, the way children always know, that something was deeply, deeply wrong. This is that protest. All those kids standing outside. And they're wearing different colors based upon segregation. And then they did something else. They wrote it down. A released mother named Christian Hinojosa took the letters of dozens of children with her when she left. ProPublica published them on February 9th. And the country heard what children sound like when they're asking for help and don't know who's listening. A 7-year-old named Matthias wrote, "I need you to help us. I cry a lot. They don't treat us well here. There are many children. We are kidnapped. Help." A 9-year-old named Maria Antonia, whose family was intercepted on their way to Disney World, we covered that story, wrote after 100 days, "I'm in jail and I'm sad and I fainted twice since I'm in here." She's now home, by the way. A 14-year-old named Ariana wrote, "All kids are being damaged mentally. The drawings were worse. Frowning faces, stick figures behind wire fences." One child just wrote, "I want to leave. I want to go home. We are not criminals." And when the government found out the children told the truth about what was happening to them, they took their crayons. These are the monsters. Guards came in teams of 8 and 10. They confiscated crayons, colored pencils, paper, and artwork. That's Gestapo shit. They started monitoring video calls. And after Miss Rachel, yes, the children's YouTube star who I talked about last week, posted a video call with a 9-year-old detainee. Homeland Security responded by banning video calls in community areas entirely. Because when you're doing the right thing, you ban video calls, right? The children told the world what was happening. The government didn't fix the conditions. They silenced the witnesses. And the witnesses are children. And only after the children stood strong, the world stood with them. On January 28th, hundreds of people marched 3 miles from Dilley's City Park to the detention center. 40 DPS Texas troopers in riot gear showed up on a school bus. Yes, a school bus. And they weren't there to protect the protesters, sadly enough. They fired pepper ball grenades at the crowd. The air turned into a thick white haze. 2 people were arrested. The troopers said demonstrators were breaching barriers and spitting on officers. Oh my God. The demonstrators said they were standing outside a building full of children. Then, shortly after ProPublica published the letters, a congressman read them aloud at a congressional hearing and held up a 5-year-old's drawing in which none of the faces were smiling. Nearly 4,000 doctors and nurses from 49 states signed a 58-page letter demanding every child at Dilley be released immediately. We can see how well they've listened. And they sent that to the dog killer, Secretary Noem. Author's note from Descent in Bloom. She too is a registered nurse, and she wrote this article because Dilley is an emergency. Free the families. The letter from doctors and medical personnel cited peer-reviewed research showing PTSD symptoms in up to 100% of studied detained child populations. They are intentionally traumatizing this entire generation of kids. They also pointed out that a proven alternative, the Family Case Management Program, achieved a 99% compliance rate at $36 a day per family. Detention costs over $319. Well, Core Civic doesn't make a lot of money under the Family Case Management Program, do they? That's not going to work. So not only is it crueler, it's 9 times more expensive to do this. Both children, by the way, in the Miss Rachel videos were released after the videos went viral. Hollywood actors Pedro Pascal, Madonna, John Legend, Jane Fonda, America Ferrera, Mark Ruffalo, and dozens more signed an open letter demanding the facility be shut down. Monthly bookings dropped from 600 to 133 in February. Public pressure works. By mid-March, down to 54. The population went from over 900 in January to roughly 100 by late March. DHS said custody decisions are made on a case-by-case basis and that the administration does not make immigration decisions based on public opinion. But the numbers tell a different story. The press investigated. The lawyers litigated. The public refused to look away, and the walls shook. My guess is that they've also just shifted where they are bringing these people, and they're not imprisoning the families in the same facility. They're not imprisoning fewer people. They're just not doing it here, is my take. None of this should have been necessary. International law, specifically the Convention on the Rights of the Child, is not ambiguous. The detention of children over their parents' migration status is a violation of their rights always. No exceptions. We've signed on to this document, but of course, the Trump administration wipes its ass with it. Actually, not true. 196 countries ratified that convention. We are the only UN member state that has not. Remember, the UN CRC requires governments to meet children's basic needs. At its heart is the recognition that every child has fundamental rights. I guess that's too much for our country. These include the right to life, survival, and development, the right to protection from violence, abuse, or neglect. Clearly, that's not a right that they're entitled to right now in Dilley. An education that enables children to fulfill their potential, to be raised by or have a relationship with their own parents, and that they're allowed to express their own opinions and be listened to, which clearly you're not allowing them to do by taking away their crayons and art supplies. Under our own domestic law, the Flores settlement requires children to be released within 20 days in safe and sanitary conditions. Dilley failed on every count. And who is jailing these people? Who is guillotining them? Who is holding them accountable for these children? 180 children left the country through voluntary departure in the facility's first 9 months. Their families abandoned valid legal claims, not because their cases were weak, but because the conditions were unbearable. They gave up their right to be heard, because staying long enough to be heard meant staying in ICE custody and potentially being tortured or, in some cases, impregnated. I saw that they had an entire facility for impregnated teenagers who had been raped by guards and other detainees. This is part of a much larger crisis. Human Rights Watch documented 32 deaths in ICE custody last year, which was the most in ICE detention in a year since 2004. Frightening that there wasn't ever, but still, in more than 20 years. America is on the fast track for a much higher death toll in 2026, already at 14, and we're only 4 months in. Not even 3.5. Amnesty International found conditions at ICE facilities that in some cases amount to torture. I reported on that story from Minnesota. Kristi Noem, former DHS secretary, told us exactly what these places are for. Not safety, fear. Angola, Dilley, every detention center in between. The suffering is intentional, and it always has been. That is the system working exactly as designed. Make it bad enough, and people stop asking for help. The story doesn't end with the last sentence you read. It ends with what you do next. Dilley is still open. That contract runs through 2030. The appeals are still pending. The families are still waiting. And somewhere right now, a child is lying on a bunk bed under fluorescent lights, wondering if anyone out there knows they exist. They do now. You do. 100 children chanted Libertad. Not Todd, but Libertad, like liberty, inside a building surrounded by guards and fences and ICE vehicles. They didn't have lawyers. They didn't have votes. They didn't have money. They had their voices and they used them. If the children behind a fence found the courage to demand freedom, the least we can do is make sure someone hears them. The nurses signed the letter. The reporters told the story. The lawyers filed the motions. Now it's our turn. Call, write, march, donate, vote, and tell everyone you know about this shit because they're not hearing about it. Don't let this become something you once read about and forgot about. Because the only thing that keeps a place like Dilley running is the assumption that you will eventually look away and not tell anyone about it. Prove them wrong. dissent reminds us that this article took over 40 hours of her own research. She has no help and no team. This is all on her own. 40 hours of research, sourcing, and fact-checking. No algorithm promoted it. No corporation funded it. And if you believe in this kind of journalism and believe that it matters, paid subscription or a one-time donation is how it survives. And right now, she certainly could use the support. Fucking bastards is absolutely right, Max Sarjay. I was infuriated reading this. And that's why I brought this, because I think not enough people have heard the details about just how bad it is for these children. And imagine this were your kid. I'm a parent. I don't want to even enter the possibility into my brain that somebody would do this to my child, let alone somebody else's. And again, the trauma that's being inflicted on these children is so much worse. This is stuff that will stick with these kids for their lives. And I don't know, you can't apologize for that. You can't undo that. No amount of therapy really gets you fully over that, ever. You never get over that. That feeling of abandonment, that feeling of fear when you were a child and you were expecting things to be a certain way. And look, this then goes back to think of the children of Gaza. Think of the children of the West Bank right now. Think of the children of Iran worrying about their homes being bombed and the threat that they were under, like today, literally. It's fuck ICE-DF. That's right. That's right, because they do train together. Go start. Just insanity, inhumane treatment is us. All right. Okay. Trump losing control of the pedo dollar from the Epstein class childhood sex files. Yep. There's all that happening. Yeah. Welcome to Abby and to everyone else who's here. Cowboy Kitty. I sent you a message. I don't know if you sent me one back, but I did. I am planning on showing the thing from Natalia. Okay. Support independent media, because we need it more than ever. I don't see too many places talking about what's happening inside Dilley from the perspective of the children and trying to be their voice. Why I deeply appreciate and respect Dissent in Bloom. I deeply appreciate and respect the fact that she's on that board also for being one of our biggest supporters. And that's just an honor. The ways to support Cash App, $, Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network, at patreon.com/Indie News Network, at IndieNewsNow.com. It's the show. It's the name of the show, but it's also a website where we aggregate news from over 100 independent sources 24/7, and you can leave a tip for our network. Also, INNnewsletter.com and IndieMediaToday.com are over on Substack, where you can subscribe monthly or annually over there also. All right. I got a couple of lightning round stories real quick, and then we can get to our tributes and what the updates about Natalia and Aspen and, of course, Shanda. Okay, but before we do that, here's our lightning round. No Kings, I guess, was looking for their next thing to do, and they realized that they need to seize and maintain momentum and energy off of the rally, and maybe that they waited a little bit too long from the last one. So they're looking to capitalize off of the energy from the parades that happened around the country last week. And now they are trying to funnel that into a May Day general strike. Now, I love the fact that they're talking general strike. My concern is that this is corporate funded and astroturfed, number one, and that it is only calling for a one-day general strike, because that is not a general strike. That's a day off, an unpaid holiday, effectively. But it's not, yeah, I can get behind a general strike too, but this isn't a general strike. This is take the day off to yell about our problems and then go back and don't change your behavior the next day. So what's happening here is that the No Kings organizers and Indivisible, also DNC captured, pivot to a May Day general strike. This was in Payday Report. I like Mike Elk from Payday Report. Again, I think he's a little too hopeful for Democrats to actually do the right things. But what he said was cities on Saturday from No Kings, over 3,000 cities and towns across the U.S. and overseas participated. After No Kings, Indivisible, one of the lead organizers of the No Kings protests, is pivoting to building support for the May Day Strong walkouts and actions. They intend to use their massive email lists and organizers for May Day Strong. The May Day Strong Coalition is calling for no work, no school, no shopping on May 1st. What day of the week is May 1st again? It's a Friday. So take the day off Friday is basically what they're asking for. Coming off the heels of the massive energy from the No Kings mobilizations, people are ready to take action and keep fighting for democracy. All right, so this is Lee Greenberg. Again, corporate astroturfed and funded. I love Mike, and I love his hope here, but I think that he's a little naive as to what the point of this really is. I think this entire point is to astroturf the entire movement and corporatize it and limit it to one day and control it and control the messaging and narrative that goes with it. Because if it were a real protest, here's what would happen. Alia Moro on April 1st, imagine if all these people skipped the feel-good march and instead parked themselves outside detention centers like Dilley, outside weapons factories like Elbit, or started boycotting companies like Exxon and Amazon. Instead, no inconvenience, no disruption. Cafes were packed, cards were swiping. Nothing says down with the system like a post-protest latte at Starbucks, right? We basically gave capitalism a standing ovation. If the goal was to be heard, you don't march politely and go shopping after. You make it expensive to ignore you. About 8 million people allegedly showed up. As an organizer, speaking from Alia's own experience, most don't follow through with meaningful action afterwards. We need more people engaging in disruptive, direct action. We already didn't have a king. We have a fascist president. Now what? So that's a good point. I definitely advocate more for direct action than for taking the day off with a protest parade. It's nice, it feels good, but nothing fundamentally changes from that. It just moves things a little closer to who knows what, and we don't really have time for that right now. So I also wanted to bring this article, but it's super long. So I'm going to leave a link to in the description so that you guys can go back and read it for yourselves. But Michael Aria, who's one of the co-founders of Mondoweiss, wrote about the JDL. The JDL is an extremist organization, a Jewish extremist group that advocates for violence. And one of their members was actually accused and arrested of plotting to assassinate a Palestinian activist in Hoboken, New Jersey last week. I didn't bring this story because I still felt like it's almost a false flag in a way. It would have been terrible had anything happened, and I'm glad they were actually able to stop it. Maybe I'll bring something about it next week. I did not see too many outlets talk about this, though a lot of the ones that cover Palestine did. I saw Palestine Chronicle covered it, and Electronic Intifada covered it, and other ones. Now Now, this talks about what is the JDL, who is Kahane, Meyer Kahane, and how do they continue to inspire Zionist violence. So this person that had allegedly was going to harm this activist, they had stopped this beforehand, and we've got to investigate. They're a terrorist group. This is Meyer Kahane. He's the leader of this group. All right, and just very basic info. Last week, Alexander Heifler, a 26-year-old living in Hoboken, was arrested over an alleged plot to firebomb the home of Palestinian activist Nardine Kiswani. Heifler belonged to a Zionist organization called the JDL 613 Brotherhood, a little-known group that draws inspiration from one of the most notorious Jewish organizations in the U.S. in recent decades, the JDL. I talked with Gen X Girl about this more than a year ago already when we talked about Beitar and the terrorist organizations that Zionists fund within the United States to terrorize Jewish Americans and the like, and anybody that stands against Israel. So I would, again, encourage everyone to go read this article by Michael Aria over at Mondo Weiss. Finally, I wanted to bring this by Jen Budd. Jen Budd is a whistleblower from Homeland Security. She was an agent, and she wrote this article. She wrote this post about, and this is kind of in line with the Dilley facility and how they were running all of these ICE contracts through that shadow town. All right. Jen also reports here that she was seeing a lot of articles about how DHS or ICE is pausing their warehouse plan, but that's not really the case. They're transitioning to having local sheriff departments hold those warehouse leases. And that, in turn, gets past the no-bid federal contract stuff, like where they have to have bids. And, you know, that's what Dissent talked about earlier in her article. That would then get past all of that because the local municipalities may have different rules around the bidding process. So what she said was technically they are pausing buying warehouses, but they're still creating warehouse camps. Sabot Consulting has an entire program designed for sheriffs on how to convince citizens to say yes to this. Her understanding is that former ICE officials may be consulting Sabot. This is one warehouse camp currently being argued in Bradford County, Florida. The sheriff is desperate to control the lease for ICE. It smells. Residents have been trying to get national attention, but the press doesn't care. So phase 1 includes this massive part of the campus, and then phase 2 expands out the facility with, 3, 6, 7, 8 more buildings that would house more detainees. When you zoom in on that first section, you see all the different housing and the rec yard and the intake area that would come off the bus and exactly how this would work. But again, this would now not be subject to federal bidding or congressional oversight because it's being done by local sheriffs. So what I said was, the people who want to make this happen, keep finding ways to stay a step ahead because they've already planned for the blowback and the pivot. Look at this as an example. How is the DHS budget going to pay the leases to the local sheriff departments? What happens when the new admin comes in, cuts the DHS budget, and these local sheriff departments, who rely on state and federal funding, either close the facility or then need to make other cuts just to keep them open? The move is to not make the deal at all, especially if Homeland Security is just using them to get the lease off their books. They'll make it profitable for that sheriff's department, but it's not going to be sustainable And the one that got all the money is Homeland Security, not the sheriff's departments. So let them fucking do it. Okay, finally, I wrote an article yesterday. I published some random thoughts. I used to do this more often. This would have ended up in a lightning round, but I had a lot that I wanted to cover, so I just kind of stuck these into an article. First of all, about the lunacy coming out of Trump and the unhinged notes that are coming on Truth Social and the silence from his supporters that's absolutely been deafening. All right. And the mental gymnastics that they're doing. Now, there are some that are begging for the 25th Amendment. And like I said earlier, I think that part of allowing him to go this unhinged is that the powers that be behind all of this want the American public begging for J.D. Vance to be installed as president. We talked about that earlier. Gordon Dimmock weighed in. A lot of Republicans love Reagan's Mr. Gorbachev tear down that wall speech. Personally, I think Trump's open the fucking straight, you crazy bastards line is a far more diplomatic and effective one. Republicans should be very proud. Tongue planted firmly in cheek. He literally said, praise be to Allah on Easter. All right. Then there was the whole psyop about being rushed to Walter Reed and how both sides were celebrating. At first, it was the liberals were celebrating, oh, maybe it's finally time. And then it was a false alarm. You guys bought into some nonsense and da-da-da. And he's fine. And he's standing there with the Easter bunny. Creepy. All right, then there's everything that we're cutting for war and what the military budget proposed was and what would have to be cut in order to achieve that. Insane. That's probably not going to happen. It's a wish list. I gave people a new person they should follow over on Instagram, the Dre Dossier, also on Substack. And then Ginger Theory. I like Ginger Theories. I've watched a bunch of their videos about Epstein and the global cabal of sex traffickers and, international criminals that have run this and that have run this operation. He's had a lot of spot on videos on Instagram. He decided to do a face review a month ago. I totally missed this. So I included the video where she does that so you can click and watch it for yourself. There's her face. Okay, so she reveals it, and then she talks about is Tucker Carlson a CIA agent? All right, then I gave everyone an update as to what my consistent publishing schedule is and what they can expect, both here and in INN newsletter. And 2 to 3 live streams, 5 to 6 clips per week, all for the low price of value for value. Name your own price. All right. And that's my random thoughts, which you can find again at IndieMediaToday.com. That's my Substack. Finally, I talked about Indie News Now multiple times. I mentioned it when I tell people to support independent media. This is what Indie News Now looks like currently. Actually, if I give it a refresh, it probably will have different articles at the top because it is constantly moving with new articles. Hey, look at that. There's this show. So this has over 100 sources that we aggregate 24/7. It's completely ad-free. It is free to all. Please use it. It clicks and gives you links directly to the source that we grab that article from or video. This is, again, where you can keep the news free and leave a tip for our network, or you can pick up some merch. And I am currently working with our merch team at Big Frog Store. It's not up yet, but we are going to create the Shandamasta Fuck Cancer collection. And I'm gonna get a little bit more into that in a minute with Oz, but we're gonna use the Zago image illustration of Shanda and put it on shirt, hoodie, tank top, and sticker, and any profits from that we will donate. We'll either donate directly to Shanda's expenses or in time to cancer research once we've got those settled. That's my plan there. So you can, again, go to IndieNewsNow.com, click on the merch link, and I will update everyone when that design is up and available to be purchased by all. Okay. So that was our lightning round. And then we just have the GoFundMes and our tribute to get to, and talking about Cowboy Kitty's sister-in-law, Natalia. First off, before we do that, support independent media because we need it more than ever. Ways to do that are up on that wall. And all the people that are on that wall have already done so, and I greatly appreciate everyone on there. Cash App, $, Indie News Network. ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. PayPal.me/Indie News Network. Patreon.com/Indie News Network. IndieNewsNow.com, which I just showed you. You can leave a tip there. Or over on Substacks at INNnewsletter.com or at IndieMediaToday.com. Yes, Dissent, I agree with you. Tucker Carlson is 100% a Fed. Agreed. But that was what this person was asking her last month, because a lot of people haven't caught up yet. The Iran war is wag the dog, I guess, except that it's something that Israel had been trying to goad us into for decades. We didn't just invent a war as a distraction. It was already there the entire time. It's not like they had created wag the dog. They literally just created a conflict that didn't exist at all. Here, there's been a lot of saber rattling and bombast back and forth for a long time. Okay, let me bring this up because I have a separate window of tabs, because I have a lot of tabs to show for this. So it's time for our GoFundMes. I've been showing GoFundMes on this show for a long time, and we started showing this GoFundMe last summer. This is Natalia. Natalia was stopped by the police at a routine traffic stop last summer over registration, was taken into ICE custody, and is still sitting there pending appeal. She has asylum in this country, and they don't give a shit, and they want to deport her to Ukraine, where she got asylum because she feared for her life and was granted it. Again, Trump administration doesn't give a shit. So Cowboy Kitty, who's in chat right now, has been her champion, and amazing. Think about all the people that don't have advocates within ICE facilities. Thankfully for Natalia, she has Anthony, or has Cowboy Kitty looking out for her, and us, and not just us here, but Kit Cabello, I know, over at Hardlens, and JB Font and others have also talked about this on their podcasts and shows and tried to raise awareness. Cowboy Kitty got to talk to Natalia about a week ago in ICE facility and quickly scratched and scribbled down notes on a napkin as he was able to speak to her on the phone. And he asked me to share that with you. And last week, I had not had a chance to really do it the diligence that I wanted to. So what I did here, it is kind of chicken scratch. I love you. I love you, bro. But it was a little bit hard to read. So I blew it up and I broke it up into different pieces. So, and then I added text and I kind of interpreted what I was seeing here. So again, this is the GoFundMe for Natalia. I'm going to put that in chat for everyone right now. All right. So that if you have a couple of bucks and you're able to, you can support her and her family and her fight to stay in this country. Again, she's truck driver, doing all the right things here, not hurting anyone. The kind of people we actually want here, but not the Trump administration, I guess, but fuck them. So what I'm going to do here is, this is Cowboy Kitty's notes of what he saw, of what he scribbled down. And again, it's like I said, it's kind of hard to see at this level, at this Zoom level. So what I did was I cut it in half and I zoomed in even further. So let's look at the top half of what was written here. What he wrote down was guards torturing and abusing inmates. Hair falling out. No health care and medicine even. Okay, that mental health was deteriorating. And that there was garbage food. And that there was no sunlight for 9 months. And the bathrooms weren't working properly. And she was asking you to contact Governor DeWine. And I think that says we'll go on a show. I don't know what specifically that said. She's not illegal. She has no criminal history. And then I couldn't quite understand what was being said here, but something about, I think this is somebody in the facility, okay, that there's a husband who's disabled, okay, and that he's having asthma attacks. Can't help but he's trying. Okay. She said that there are things she sees that are happening that she's scared to discuss on a monitored call, which is not a surprise. That this is happening in Mahoning County, Ohio. That even though they were speaking Russian, multiple languages, there were no translators there. And that she's the only one there who speaks her language at the facility. And finally, that there were guards there who were white and Latino. That there were 5 to 8 girls with her, that they were all Latina. And that this is the first time that she's exposed this. So again, free Natalia. And the link to her GoFundMe is in the chat for all to support if you're able to. She should not be in this facility. There's no reason for this. It's so punitive and torturous and horrible for no reason. Cowboy Katie, I love you, man. Buck is right. I'm sorry if I showed something I wasn't supposed to. Free Natalia. I think I saw he said that he actually went on camera on Abby and Mikhail's show today, which is great. Courageous. Appreciate you. Yeah, standing up for people like that, we need more of. Okay, next GoFundMe. We've talked about Justice for Aspen. So Justice for Aspen is just a sad story of a person who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Lied to by her friends. Ended up going to Florida to go see a music festival in an RV with a guy, a friend of a friend, who she was told was safe and was a decent person. Well, turns out that guy was actually a drug trafficker. They got pulled over in their RV on the way back from the festival. The RV was searched, the drugs were found, and everyone in the vehicle was charged with trafficking, including Aspen, who didn't know about the drugs, who had never seen the drugs, and spent more than 2 weeks in Georgia County lockup. Dissenting Bloom wrote an article about both Natalia as well as about Justice for Aspen and about her story and some of the conditions in that Georgia facility and the laws around what happens in a Georgia jail. And it's a nightmare. It's horrifying. We got to get her out. I don't know how this is going to happen, but we need to have funds for experts and lawyers and living expenses while she's fighting this. And this already happened almost a year ago. And we don't know how long until the next hearing. Her mom, Halo Benson, is a Assange advocate and activist in Oklahoma. We did a live stream fundraiser back in October, so check that out. Jesse Jett played a 2-hour concert after we had live stream where I cut up parts of our interview, and then we had a live one-on-one. Descent in Bloom joined, and Jay Buffont joined. I hosted it, and we just did what we could to raise some money and raise awareness for Aspen's story and her case. Again, the link to the GoFundMe's in here. You can also support Aspen by purchasing some of her art. The article by Descent in Bloom, everything you can find is at linktr.ee/justice and the number 4 Aspen. She's one of the good people, one of us and a member of the family. And again, if this were a member of our family, we would want people out there raising awareness and fighting the fight for them. And that's why I do this every week. Okay. Finally, this is hard. So here, by the way, is Aspen's GoFundMe, which right now is at $10,600. And she's going to need a lot more. I mean, when I talked to Halo originally about this, she was talking like 50,000 or more is what they would need in order to fund a defense like that. So anything anybody can do, it really does make a big difference. Okay. Finally, we've got Shanda. Talked about this lady every week since she was diagnosed in August of 2024. And unfortunately, last week, Shanda lost her fight. And we were all very sad. And she fought valiantly and so hard, and she survived longer than more than 50% of the people who are diagnosed with small cell lung cancer, which she was. It came back twice. She had it beaten, cleared, and it came back aggressively, this fucker. It attacked her salt, which is unusual for a cancer. And she fought all she could, and her body gave out last Thursday. I ran a live stream on Thursday night with the last interview that I had done with her back in October. And it was inspiring, and it was incredible to see the community come together to support this Indie Media Award honoree, this champion of independent media. And I'm glad that we did it, and that we had the space for everyone to come here and mourn and grieve and do it together, because I think that's what she would have wanted. And it was a lot of the community that she and Oz, her co-host at Beauty and the Boomer, built. And so I wanted to bring some of the tweets and some of the sentiments from people. So Oz originally came and posted at 5 o'clock on Thursday. This was the message that it's with the heaviest of hearts, tremendous grief, and more than a little anger that we announced the passing of our sister, our light, Shanda, who was doing battle with small cell lung cancer in the American health care system. Hardly a fair fight, but Shanda's bravery and amazing strength proved her to be a formidable opponent. And for a while, she was winning. From the streams of Beauty and the Boomer and Trailer Park Pundit, Shanda selflessly showed everyone her journey through treatment, shared her most painful and desperate moments, and continued working to bring the truth to you all who she loved dearly. In Shanda's memory, please just love each other. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Be a friend to animals and to the earth. Donate to others when you can and what you can. And don't be a boat licker. Fuck cancer. Signed Oz, Amber, Linda, and RM. Well, AREM over at Roar Media. And he tagged a bunch of people, including me. And Amber at Brave New Future, who had driven Shanda to the hospital every day while she was going through her last treatment. I'd like to think that it was this beautiful spring moon, just lovely for Shanda to sail away upon from her hospital room with an ocean view in a place she loved. I'm glad to know her suffering is ended. She'll never be forgotten. Okay. That moment I was like, I had no other words other than fuck cancer. I came up with some later on, but all I could think at that moment was fuck cancer. I said heartbroken, I'll miss my sister, and proud to have been able to be her last interview in October. And what a champ and a fighter. She's already missed. And then I had to write something for INN, and I put this graphic together. Heartbreaking news that all the members of INN are so sad to see our friend and sister succumb to her battle with cancer today. She was a bright light that will be missed by so many. In place of American tradition, we will stream her last interview recorded in October. And again, I'm so glad that we did that. INN members, Colin Radix Carter says, the independent media space just lost an OG in her fight against cancer. Rest in power, Shanda. What good is our healthcare system if we can't take care of our friends and family? Okay. Mad Crab, we lost a real one. Rest in peace. Angel, the handsome cynic, sorry to hear. I wish I took the chance to get to know her more, but for one reason or another, it never happened. The interactions we did have, she was great to me and helped me out. Thank you, and rest in power. Okay. Halo, again, Aspen's mother. I'm honored to have worked with Shanda and called her a friend. She will be missed. Everybody knows Jack's Page. Both myself and my husband are devastated to hear this. My heart breaks for her family and for you, Oz. I know how close you two were, and she was amazing, so special. Just an all-around amazing person. Absolutely heartbroken. We all are. She touched so many lives with her activism and her podcasts. Her husband and she had built their Saturday nights around Beauty and the Boomer for years. Shanda was always extremely kind to her. Such a beautiful soul. Fuck cancer. Taken far too soon. Paula Iacella, another Indie Media Award honoree for activism. So sad, such a beautiful person. I was fortunate to have met Shanda in D.C. at a big Assange rally at the DOJ. She did several interviews that day. Like you said, she was a bright light for all of us. That was actually the day that we introduced the Indie Media Awards. That was October 8th, 2022. I'll never forget it. Paula also notes that Shanda was one of the first big wave of Bernie-inspired local candidates elected in Washington state as a delegate. Many of us were introduced to her when she did interviews blowing the whistle on the corrupt local Dems and their shenanigans that suppressed the progressive agenda. That was back in 2017, 2018, right through 2020. She was still there. Tara Reid. Everyone knows Tara. Really sorry to see this. Shanda was a really kind soul. Okay. Fuck, it's such a terrible disease. Sleepy Josh. We all know Sleepy Josh, member of the family. So sorry, Oz. Shanda was one of the nicest people I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. The world lost someone that will never be replaced. The world isn't fucking fair. And members of the community, members of their audience, Chili Love. Love you, Shanda. Beautiful soul, fly free. Lizzie Prickles. These were the producers for Beauty and the Boomer. So sorry and sad to hear this news. He was thinking of her often, but especially the past week. She wanted to reach out, wish she had. Godspeed, dear, sweet, wonderful Shanda. You'll be missed. Deb V. Rest in power. My heart breaks for your families and besties and so many others. Okay, and then we've got Cynic. Of course, our darling Shanda, you'll be missed. My love to Shanda's family and her dearest friends. And Worker Wombat, who's, I believe, in the chat. And the Wombat tweets. We got multiple Wombats in there. And Three-Chord Grifter, man, this really sucks. I totally agree. It was a hard day. And then we have some of the live stream community, Do Dissidents, that actually had Shanda on last July, and she was on with Misty as well. Very kind soul, taken far too soon. Spoke with her about a month back, and she was in great spirits. She was very brave and very much will be missed. And that's Keaton, I believe, what made that post. Kit over at Hard Lens had just found out we lost the beautiful Shanda today. She was an angel in this world. Please send condolences. This was an interview she had done with Kit and Daniel back in 2021. Fred Edward, I cannot find the words to say how I feel. Yeah, I feel that, bro. Harry Worth, also another member of the family. Ghost Art posted this video that was created by Death to Tyrants. So you can go watch that over on Rumble. Speaking of Ghost Art grabbed a screen cap of the stream from the other night on Rumble. Appreciate him doing that and posting that. We'll always miss you, Shanda. And I said I was glad he was there tonight. I'm very glad you were there. Okay, and then again, No More Santa Claus was talking about the stream in memory of Shanda, a comrade and an inspirational pioneer in independent media online. Her last interview, and there was the link. And finally, Victory Jin also commented and noted that the interview was a banger. And thank you. I'm just grateful that she was well enough to do it and had the strength to do it. And like I said, we're going to create at the merch store a Shanda Masta Fuck Cancer collection where there will be a t-shirt, a hoodie, a tank top, and a sticker that you can purchase. And it will have her name and 1974 to 2026. And all the profits will be donated either to her GoFundMe or final expenses and medical bills. And after that's settled, it would then go to cancer research. Rest in power, Shanda. We miss you. Love you. I knew that was going to be hard, but when I've been talking about her every week for this long, we have to follow through. So thank you to everyone. And there's Oz. Thank you for your kindness and condolences. I love you, man. I'm sorry. And she's missed already. All right. We're going to get out of here for tonight. I love you all. Take care of each other. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. And have a good night, everyone. I'll see you next Tuesday. No! We just fucking lost the stream!
I think I liked it better being blind, when I couldn't read between the lines, and when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride. I thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry.
My favorite songs don't hit the same way. I get to the end of a 4-minute track and I'm only looking back thinking, what did they actually say? So
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want